Hey everybody, and welcome to Don't Copy That Floppy, your weekly video game news podcast. Usually broadcasting live Fridays 7 to 8 p.m. This week we're doing it a little different. We're broadcasting live at 7:30 a.m. Wow. So it is Friday, April 6th, 2018. I'm your host Lex, and I'm joined by my co-host
Booge.
And this week we're going to be talking about a lot of quick stories and a couple of interesting little leak tidbits, including the PS5. What's the deal? When is it coming out? Soon, maybe? I don't know. After that, we're going to be talking... Yeah, probably not. After that, we're going to be talking about... retro games that have come back or are going to come back and fixes to them. Then we're going to be talking about Marvel's own Mr. Spiderman and his new wardrobe, followed by the story, I don't remember what it is, followed by Cliffy B news.
Yeah, the one you missed was about Middle-earth Shadow of War and the dreaded loot box.
Shadow Wardor.
Shadow of Wardor.
Yep. Then we're going to be talking about games that just came out, games that are about to come out. So, let's jump into it with some semi-accurate information.
Semi-accurate. The $1,000 website.
So yeah, Semi-Accurate, apparently a subscription-based news website, which has a $1,000 subscription fee. Is that per month or per, like, year?
Life? I hope it's per life.
Yeah, I know, right? That's crazy. It's so much money.
Yeah.
But they're in the news because they talked about, I guess it was leaks or something from people that work at Sony, about how they are working on a PS5 and they have specs for it and they have speculation for when it is going to be released onto the market. And the specs seem realistic. The speculation does not. But it's interesting, and I think it's all the more... I think the people at Semi-Accurate should be really sad because who knows how many big stories they break. But the minute they break one that people really care about, is people don't need a $1,000 subscription, that news goes right out onto the internet.
Yeah, it goes right to Reset Era, and that's where it stays.
And no one's getting that subscription for this because
they must do something else. They must, I don't know. They must do like mock reviews or something.
I know, right? Like I don't get it.
I don't either.
So
their website looks like shit too, by the way.
I know, right? So Semi-Accurate is a site that gave us some details back in 2013 about the sort of what became known as the PS4 Pro, but they were talking about it as like the PS4 PS4.1, PS4.2, and PS4.3, and the idea that instead of releasing a new console, the technology in the existing ones would just be upgraded to take advantage of new stuff, since the life cycles have been so much longer in this generation than previous ones. And that ended up being totally true. So now they're coming out with more stuff about Sony, and I think it's worth listening to at the very least. But we have the specs, and I don't know, do you want to go through them?
Yeah, there's not many. It's summarized by someone named Lil Lazy on Reset Era. Apparently it uses AMD's Navi as its base architecture, the most probably the most annoying of base architectures. Wait, uses AMD's Navi as its base architecture, not specifically using Navi. I don't understand.
I think it's supposed to be a custom version of the AMD technology.
Got you.
Which makes sense for a console.
Listen.
Oh god,
CPU...
if the console said that like every time you turned it on, oof.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
The CPU is custom Zen. It's a large amount of dev kits have apparently gone out, and authors suggest 2018 release of PS5 is not out of the question based on the amount of dev kits released, as this is a, quote, sure sign that the launch is getting close. Not definitive, and I would editorialize here and say not likely.
Yeah.
Highly unlikely, I think. And then there's some editorializing on their side, VR quote unquote goodies baked in at the silicon level. My opinion, not authors. So Sony not giving up on PSVR anytime soon. VR support inside PS5 right out of the box. I can see that happening. I don't know if that's a rumor or I mean this is all rumors, but like I can see that happening considering how much R&D they put into PSVR and how much they are still standing behind it, even though I don't think it does crazy numbers for them.
No, it doesn't do super well from what I've read, but it does do better than all the other VR stuff because it's so much easier to just plug a VR headset into a console than, buying a gaming PC for it.
Right, and the install base is already there. Too,
yeah, so it's by far, from what I've heard, the best selling VR and has, I think, the most titles out for it. But again, like there still hasn't been any kind of killer app for VR, so I don't know.
Yeah, probably the biggest and most ubiquitous one was Resident Evil 7. But I can see that happening. I can see them almost kind of doing like almost like a Nintendo thing and kind of make it a specifically hardware focused kind of console.
That would be interesting. And I think that, yeah, if they have support for VR right out of the gate, I don't have an issue with that. I think I have an issue with it when they try and push it on people in a similar way to like how like the Xbone initially pushed their Kinect. Or whatever it was called. Was it called the Kinect? Or was that the Sony one? I don't know.
No, Kinect was the Microsoft one. Yeah, the one that everyone hated.
The one everybody hated, and now it's dead.
Yeah, it's dead.
So it's one of those things where, yeah, if they want to have VR support in the base console, no problem with that, because if people are going to VR, they have the opportunity to VR. But, yeah, if they try and push it on us, like, you have to buy a VR headset with every PlayStation 5, I'm just going to be like, no, thank you. This is stupid.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think they might do, like, a Nintendo Wii thing, and just, it's like, it's in the box, or something like that. It comes with every console. If they can get the price down enough.
The stuff about the chip architecture sounds pretty reasonable. And the stuff about how there's a large amount of dev kits that have gone out, I think is interesting. But then the conclusion that the semi-accurate people draw from that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, there's lots of dev kits. That means this is going to release this year. And I'm like, yeah, but how long have the dev kits been out? Because even if we're saturated with dev kits that at this point no one has heard about until you mentioned them, right. even if all game companies are saturated with PS5 dev kits, it still takes like usually more than a year to make a game.
Yeah.
And Sony's not so stupid as to launch a console without a strong launch lineup.
No, and I mean, at least their first party studios and second party like partners are booked up. Like we got unless like Death Stranding's going to come out on the PS5, which is not an impossibility. We still got Days Gone. We got Naughty Dog working on Last of Us, and you damn well know that they want that on PS4. I'm trying to think. I mean, God of War's coming out, but Sony Santa Monica is going to be like all the games that are coming out. The teams they're coming out soon, and the teams are probably only in pre-production for whatever their next thing is.
Yeah.
So yeah, this year it would be pretty disastrous for them in terms of their lineup.
Yeah, I have no idea why the author thinks that's a reasonable guesstimation, and I don't know. It's all the more reason to not pay them $1,000 for this article.
Exactly. Yeah. It also, if I remember correct, if I can remember hearing stories about how at least Sony and probably Nintendo as well, they do send out a lot of dev kits to their first party studios kind of regularly to test new hardware. Like, so they might get like little interim dev kits to test new stuff that they're working on, and it might not mean anything. Like, that might not be the actual architecture for the final system that they want to make. They're just testing internally. So, yeah.
Can I point out that one of my favorite comment is the first comment on this thread, which is, "Nope, I'm good. I'll wait till Sony officially announces it."
Yeah, I feel about the same way.
So
yeah, it's I think that I mean, the thing that's really interesting is that not that long ago, everyone was talking about, is it the death of console generations? I think that's like that's the framing of a sentence that is used in gaming for, I think like it changes every year. Is it the death of mobile games? Is it the death of PC games? Is it the death of this and death of that? And a lot of people are talking about is it the death of console generations? A lot of people think that we're going to go towards like a iPhone situation where we're just going to get these minuscule updates and not the big huge updates on the consoles. I'd say that's not the case. I can see, especially Sony, still going forward and making brand new architecture. I just don't see it in 20. I don't see it in 2018. I possibly don't even see it in 2019. Because, like I said before, they're going to have this huge lineup of games out. They're going to want to ride this generation a little bit longer, while their first party teams work up on stuff.
Especially since they're the top dog right now. Like, they are winning the console war. So why would they potentially undercut themselves by doing this? It would make much more sense if Microsoft was doing something like this, because they have almost no exclusives right now. And,
not a lot.
Yeah, and they're talking about how they're scaling back their exclusive stuff. I think there's an article about that a couple weeks ago. And they're also thinking about the Xbox, what is it called? The Netflix-like subscription that they have now.
Oh, Games Pass.
Yeah,
or
Game
Pass.
Game Pass. If they had a new hardware and out of the box was just optimized for that, they could be like, look, there's already games on it because you can use this. I think for them, putting out a console this year or next year would totally make sense, but there are no reports about that, so I assume they're not working on one, at least not as hard as Sony is. So.
I mean, you have to realize, like, both these companies pretty recently just came up with the Xbone X and the PS4 Pro. Was it the Pro?
Yes.
It's so. I mean, they both put a lot of money into that. I'm sure that they want to ride that out a little bit longer, even though that is for a niche market, and not a lot of people are buying them. I still think that it would be kind of a waste to just throw those. When those came out like a year ago, I think.
Maybe a little longer, but I hear what you're saying. So I think the earliest we could possibly see a PS5 is holiday 2019, but they should really hold off to like holiday 2020.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy that we can just talk about 2020 not being that that far away.
Oh, man.
It's a wild world.
Well, I think I've gotten older, I've gotten used to time just moving by so much more rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm like, 2 years. Yeah, it's not that long.
Whatever. Yeah. No, there was. I remember this stand-up comedian. It's like, when you're really young, it's like every day seems like it lasts forever. Every year seems like it lasts forever. There's holiday and then, that's another holiday, and you go to school and it's your birthday. And he keeps doing this, and he's like, and then by the time you're like, 35, it's birthday. And it just never ends. It's like, it's pretty much how I feel.
Just waiting to die, blitzing towards the grave.
Yeah, inevitable march towards oblivion.
Oof.
Anyways.
Speaking of depressing stuff, did you know Chrono Trigger was re-released?
Yeah, I know, and it looked awful. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Chrono Trigger kind of got sneak released on Steam, and it looked awful. It pretty much seemed like it was an exact port of the mobile version. So in terms of non-aesthetic things, I can't think of anything more than like that horrible font against the beautiful pixel graphics, and even the pixel graphics were fucked up. But apparently, according to Polygon, Chrono Trigger's PC port is getting the original SNES graphics back, from Michael McWhorter. Chrono Trigger's surprise release on Steam in February was great news for fans of the classic RPG, right up until the point that they saw what Square Enix had actually released. The Windows PC version of Chrono Trigger wasn't a faithful recreation of the SNES original, but a poorly received port of one of the company's mobile releases. Fans complained that the game's graphics and UI were ugly and careless. They were. And carelessly brought over from the Android iOS Chrono Trigger, modders stepped in to fix the game themselves in an attempt to release the game. Now, Square Enix says that it will address Chrono Trigger's PC port in-house with a trio of patches. Quote, "We have been working on addressing the issue that you've raised, and will be releasing a number of patches over the coming months as we continue to support Chrono Trigger on Steam," Square Enix said in an update posted on Steam. They went on to say that they is expected in the first half of April, And they said that the original, what did they say? The patch will include the option to switch between Chrono Trigger's existing graphics and, quote, the original graphical style of Chrono Trigger. I don't know why you'd want the first one. And finally, quote, we'll post a full list of changes here when the first patch is released. For now, be assured we're working very hard on adjusting, updating, and supporting Chrono Trigger on Steam. God damn it. I mean, first of all, Square Enix is actually listening for once, which is unbelievable. And they're actually, I'm excited to see if they actually pull it off. When we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think one of the more interesting things is that there was an interview with one of the lead developers at Square. I can't remember exactly who it was, but when they were talking about how a lot of fans didn't like this graphical change, and they were actually talking about Final Fantasy VI at the time. And they were talking about how a lot of fans didn't like the ugly graphics that they made on the update, and the developer was like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." And apparently, it's only a problem in the Western market. Apparently, the Japanese market doesn't care about these horrendous graphics. I guess it doesn't. The graphics translate better in Japanese, but I guess they're actually taking note and trying to fix something, because like the thing is like Chrono Trigger. It's so much of it relies on that charming art style, and if you fuck with that, it's like that's one pillar already out from its leg, out from under it.
Yep.
And so yeah, maybe they'll fix it.
Yeah, good on them doing that. Thanks, Squeenix.
Thanks for nothing.
Now let's say no thanks to this upcoming re-release that we all knew was coming. Yeah?
You got a problem? Got a problem with the Year of the Dragon?
Apparently, the Spyro Reignited trilogy for PS4 and Xbox One has been officially announced. Now, we knew this was going to happen because of the insane Crash Bandicoot trilogy. And a lot of people...
Which sold insanely well.
Especially in the UK. Man, they just love it there. But this was... So when that was happening, there was tons of speculation that Spyro would be re-released because it's the same era, and I think people think of those games in the same context.
Yeah. It was the era of the 3D platformer mascot.
Yes. So... Now we know that that's going to happen officially. I think surprising pretty much no one.
Yep. Some company called Toys for Bob is handling the remasters.
Oh no. Well, who did the Insane trilogy remaster?
I don't know.
Because if that was just a no-name company and they did that well, then I don't know. I guess that's a good reason for studios to be like, whatever, just hire whoever.
Yeah,
even though that's not actually a sound strategy, I understand why they'd think that was a sound strategy.
Right. The Insane Trilogy was developed by Vicarious Visions.
Oh, yeah. No, I know them.
Yeah, they've been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But Toys for Bob, don't know, but who knows? I mean, like, this is not appealing to me at all. I didn't care about Spyro as a kid, or Crash for that matter. I went in late in the PlayStation life cycle. I got mine like early 2000s, I think, and got most of the games like in the greatest hits line of games that they put out. So yeah, I don't have any nostalgia for a Spyro, but a lot of people do apparently. So I guess good for them.
Yeah.
What's next on the chopping block? Is it going to be Medieval?
Oh, I would love it if Medieval was released, man.
Yeah. I never played those games either.
Those were fun. But so September 21st is when this is going to be released, and it will be $40. Do we know what it's coming out for? If it's coming out for everything or just PC or
PS4 and Xbox One. Included games originally developed by Insomniac, but the Activision subsidiary Toys for Bob is handling the remasters. They are being made from the ground up for PS4 and Xbox One.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it other than duh, and we'll see if this if Toys for Bob create a good game or a good remaster, I suppose, or if it's just rushed and super glitchy. Because I feel like what'll happen with this game, based off the Crash Bandicoot thing, what'll probably happen with this game is its release, day or release weekend or whatever, it'll sell like crazy, and then we will discover how well it works once people start streaming it and like talking about it more. And if it's full of glitches, it won't sell anymore, and people will get upset and forget about it. And if it runs really well, then we'll just probably have another Insane Trilogy situation on our hands.
The UK will go nuts again, apparently.
They'll love it.
So I just looked it up. The Toys for Bob apparently worked on a lot of Skylanders games, including Spyro's Adventure. So that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Actually, that gives me a lot more confidence in this. I'm sure they could. That this is the kind of thing that it seems like they're geared toward.
Yes. Apparently they did the Insane Trilogy for Switch. And they did Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam.
Oh, well, in that case.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk games.
Yeah. There's a lot of porn stars that'll be very happy that Spyro the Dragon's coming back.
Oh, hey, and that reminds me, when are they going to do a remake of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2?
Oh, God, I wish.
That would be great.
They did, didn't they?
I don't know, maybe.
Wait, I thought that's something that came out recently. I got to do the research on this. You can go on. I'll look this up.
So, I don't know if there's much more to say on this.
No, it'll come out. It'll probably do pretty well.
Spider-Man. He does whatever a spider can. He spins a web. It's any size. I don't really care about that song anymore. This joke is dead. There's an article from IGN from the 4th. They announced when the PlayStation exclusive Spider-Man game from Insomniac Games is going to be released, and they gave us gameplay footage and they gave us more details. Very exciting stuff because this game looks really cool, and I'm really excited to see it. So, I mean, I like Insomniac a lot. I think they do good work, and I like Spider-Man a lot. So, if you were going to give a Spider-Man game to anyone, I think they're the best people to give it to.
Oh, absolutely. I think they're Ted Price and those guys over there do really amazing work. It's totally the best people to do it. I think this... Being excited about this game is totally reliant on if you like Spider-Man or not in today's day and age. Because the PS2 Spider-Man games, some of them were really, really fucking cool and actually had some amazing tech in them regarding like the web swinging and whatnot.
Yep.
But I feel like it is not those days anymore, and there's a lot more compelling things. So it's going to really have to be crazy, crazy fun to swing around New York and, be Peter Parker. And, who knows if they'll get that right.
So this game is coming out in September. September 7th, specifically. And we're going to... we got more footage of Mr. Negative, who's going to be the main villain, which I thought was a really interesting choice for a villain, because he's, not an obvious Spider-Man villain. He actually, I think, is much more recent to the comics.
Yeah, that was when they said who that was. I'm like, well, I don't know who he is, so that means 80 to 90% of people aren't going to know who this guy is.
But then we're also going to get a bunch of side villains that are the ones everyone have heard of, which are mostly the Sinister Six fair type guys, which is like Rhino and Scorpion and Vulture are all going to show up. Kingpin's going to be in it. Shocker is going to be in it. Ooh,
Shocker.
Shocker's my fave. It's funny. Shocker is an especially funny villain in Spider-Man because he's just a crappier version of another Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, what's the other one's name?
Electro.
Electro, yeah.
Because Electro can do all this crazy stuff with electricity. Shocker can just make, electrical punches, and that's it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's why Shocker's, one of the lowest tier Spider-Man villains, and he's kind of a pushover. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. He's kind of fun to make fun of. But we learned that it's going to be a giant free-roaming city. Makes sense. It's going to be significantly bigger than the city in Sunset Overdrive, which also makes sense. It's going to have some key locations for the Marvel Universe, like the Avengers Tower, where the Avengers hang out, the Sanctum, the Sanctum Sanctorum. Ugh, I hate that name.
What the hell's that?
That's where Doctor Strange hangs out.
Yeah.
And the
doesn't he do magic and stuff?
Well, he shows up quite Doctor Strange and Spider-Man are like buds, so he shows up in Spider-Man from time to time. There was this whole weird story arc thing that they made a really big deal about in the early 2000s. This is me showing off my comic knowledge.
I was going to say, this is where we show the dichotomy of Lex liking comics and Booge knowing nothing about comics.
Yes. In the early 2000s, there was this whole big story arc where you know how Spider-Man is created by super science, like the scientific mishap type origin story? There's a story arc in the early 2000s where they decided to play up the supernatural angle, and they introduced these new characters and played up this idea that Spider-Man is partially, like, the reason why he was bitten by the radioactive spider is because Peter Parker was chosen to be the spider spiritual totem. And it was it was very weird, and it was like a couple years they were really into that, and then like there was this whole big event where like Dormammu, the Doctor Strange villain, shows up in Spider-Man comics, and Spider-Man has to defeat him, and there's all these weird like trippy dream sequence things with like lots of spiders. And it was an odd direction to go in, but Doctor Strange showed up in a lot of that, and that sort of is what initially made that connection, and now they like guest star in each other's comics from time to time. But
it's almost like comic books are like, you know, made for children to sell bubblegum and stuff. Like it's a little.
I mean, they're made to sell action figures mostly and movie tickets.
Nowadays, nowadays they're subsidiaries to the movies that get made off of them.
But so that's what started all that, but that's not super relevant to this. There's also the Wakanda embassy is going to show up, which if any of you have seen Black Panther, you know what that means. So that all sounds interesting. They did not specify if any of the characters associated with those locations would be in the game, and I'm like, well, I kind of assume that they are. Or else it would be pretty dumb to have him show up to like Avengers Tower and just no one's there.
Yeah. That would be a little shitty. I mean, the thing is, the question that you have to ask is the question that you have to ask with every open world game, is that how actually alive and populated will those cities seem?
Yes.
I don't know. You know, who knows? The only thing I care about, I'm never going to play this game, but I hope that the web swinging's good.
Yeah.
I just hope the web swinging's fun.
Well, that's like a lot of the traveling, the way you would go around places in Sunset Overdrive was really creative and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of hoping they take that kind of approach to this, and I assume that they will. Also, what was I going to say? Nope, there was some other relation to Sunset Overdrive, but I've forgotten it. It's out of my head.
That's okay. Most people have forgotten about Sunset Overdrive.
Oh, so sad. It deserved better.
Did you ever play it?
Very briefly, yes.
Yeah, it looked fun, but it was just like, no, not this game.
We found out that there's going to be alternate costumes, which obviously it would be weird if there wasn't. And one of them is a fun punk outfit.
I saw that. He's got like spikes on his head.
Yeah, it is a punk jacket. It's very odd. It's one of those things that like Spider-Man's costume in this game doesn't look like his normal costume. It looks slightly different. And there's things in this article about how apparently at the start of the game you start off with the classic costume and then get the new one at some point, like early on, which is weird. But then this alternate punk costume just seems more like Insomniac just wants to have weird, fun, new Spider-Man costumes.
Sure.
Which I guess doesn't bother me. It just seems stupid because Spider-Man has this wealth of costumes from his history that you can just put in there as unlockable content, and people will like that if they're fans of Spider-Man.
I was gonna say, isn't like out of all like superheroes, doesn't Spider-Man have like the most variant costumes like ever?
I think so. Yeah, he's probably one of the most, and partially because there's also like been multiple different people who have been Spider-Man over the years, and they've all had their different costumes. If there's DLC in this where you can play as Spider-Gwen, I'll be all about it.
Yeah, Spider-Gwen.
Spider-Gwen. Actually, Spider-Gwen, not only a great character, but some of the best modern superhero costume design I've seen in like comic books in a long
Oh,
time.
really? Is it just Gwen Stacy as a super spider person?
Yeah, it's a alternate universe in which Gwen Stacy got bitten by the spider instead of Peter Parker.
Okay.
And she has this whole thing where instead of Uncle Ben or like one of her relatives dying, and that's why she decides to be a superhero, like with Spider-Man, Peter Parker gets really obsessed with the idea of wanting to have superpowers because he doesn't, and he feels like he should because that's what's like off about that universe. So he's the one who tries to become the Lizard. If anyone knows the Lizard backstory, this episode I've gotten real into comics. But he's the one who decides to try being the Lizard, and then he's a rampaging monster. As what happens with the Lizard, Gwen Stacy tries to stop him, doesn't realize it's Peter Parker, and kills him. And then she's like, oh no, I need to be more responsible because with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah,
the
and
line, that
yeah,
line.
yeah, and that's how like her character arc comes about and how she becomes like a superhero with a troubled backstory. So, but her costume design is freaking awesome. It is so cool. So I would love it if they put her as DLC in this game. But that actually segues into the other point about this game that I think is interesting and important, is that this game is going to have several DLC packs that add story missions and some other things, but it will have no microtransactions. They have been pretty upfront about that.
Yay!
And I'm all for that move. Like we see other games like Dark Souls does the same thing, where they have big story pack DLC that they release.
Yeah, they used to call those expansions.
They used to call those expansion packs way back in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I think Blizzard's the only one that still does call them expansions.
Yeah. But I think that's a great way to do stuff. As long as it doesn't feel like missions have been cut from the game to later be released in DLC. Which,
I'm sure it will. I mean, that's what games feel like now.
I mean, yeah, that's certain games. Although Dark Souls does not feel like that typically.
No. Yeah,
so I'm just saying there's a way to do it right, and when you do it right, it can be really, really good. And there are examples out there of studios that have done that, and I trust Insomniac enough to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, and Insomniac's not a Sony first party. But for most Sony first-party studios, they, if I recall correctly, are usually pretty light on the microtransaction stuff. They're usually pretty much straight up, and then there's story DLC. Like I'm trying to think, like with Uncharted and stuff like that. I think there's just story DLC. Yeah, I think they're generally like that. Also, I want to note, I think it's interesting that they just kept the name Spider-Man. There's no other. It's not Spider-Man : something.
Spider-Man out of the shadows. Spider-Man out to lunch.
Out to lunch. Out to do laundry. Yeah, it's just Marvel's Spider-Man. I think that's interesting that they just kept that.
Well, there hasn't been a Spider-Man game in a while, as I recall.
Shattered Dimensions was the last one, maybe.
Oof. Yeah, no one remembers that. But so I think that's sort of it's kind of trying to be a rebrand and a reboot. Which is probably
a huge get for Sony.
Oh, it is, yeah, and I think it's a smart decision to go that way, especially because they're trying to with the movie franchises like Spider-Man: Homecoming just recently did that, and it worked really well for them. So they're sort of trying to take that same approach. I think it's a good idea. And finally, I mean, we got more screenshots, and this game just looks beautiful. It looks so pretty.
Yep.
But
modern games, man, they look like the CGI of old.
Yes, that's true. Finally, Blizzard cutscenes can just be games now.
Yeah.
Oof.
I'm interested to see. This is like the first big budget AAA Marvel game that's happened since they became like the owners of our souls, right? Like since they are the like richest people in the world.
I think so, because there's been a bunch of other Marvel games, but they've all been geared towards kids. Like you have things like Lego Marvel Superheroes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which are great games, but
yeah,
I wouldn't qualify them in the same sort of tier as this.
Yeah. And I know that there's been rumors forever that Rocksteady is working on an Avengers game.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Because that would be rad. I mean, they're the only they're the only company that's made a good Batman game. So
That's true.
or a couple good Batman games at least. So yeah, I'm interested to see what else Marvel has up its sleeve because Disney Infinity shut down. Disney's always been kind of cautious in the video game space, but Marvel has more money than anyone will ever have in the history of the universe. So I would be surprised if they don't dive into conquer this whole sphere as well.
Mm.
It's kind of actually interesting to me when I think about how Disney owns like all entertainment in the world.
Well, not all, but I think after the what was it, the 20th or 21st Century Fox purchase, they will own roughly 40% of the movie market.
Yeah, and I think they're buying up Warner Brothers next, not too long from now.
That man, it would be awesome if they bought up Warner Brothers because I trust Disney so much more to make a good
Caddyshack reboot?
Well, that too. That would be that'd be fantastic. Do it, please. But no, I trust them so much more to make good DC Comics movies than I trust Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers has beefed it so hard.
Yeah. I actually watched. This is also off the subject, but I watched Justice League just so I could listen to the Red Letter Media commentary track that they put out for it.
Oh, nice.
And holy Jesus, is that an ugly movie?
Oh, it's awful. It's so bad.
It's like worse than Transformers. Mm-hmm. It's just so fucking ugly. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad I didn't have to listen to it.
Yeah, no, you're lucky you didn't have to listen to it because the dialogue is awful and clunky, and and because it's done by two different directors, half of the dialogue feels like it's done by one guy and half of it feels like it's done by the other guy. So there's like no cohesion. It's terrible. It's just an awful movie.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. But anyway, Spidey-Man, Mr. Parker. If you like Spider-Man, you own a PS4, then you're already going to buy this.
Probably, yeah. We don't need to tell you.
It's pretty much a lock-in for people like that. And yeah, I just want to see if the swinging's good. That's all I care about.
Maybe I will dust off my old, what was it, Spider-Man 2, the game that I think I have I either have it for PS2 or Xbox original, and I don't remember which, but I definitely have it. Dust that off, fight the Vulture again.
Fight the Vulture, can do some Spider-Man bowling. I forgot which one had the Spider-Man bowling, but that was fun.
Oh, and does it, what's his name? Bruce Campbell narrated or something? I remember that. Because it was the Sam Raimi era, so...
Yeah, probably.
And he was and he's like best friends with Bruce Campbell. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually, as far as Spider-Man goes, those are my favorite Spider-Man things. Is the Sam Raimi films because they're so wacky and strange and like.
That was, I mean, that's
off the wall.
I think one of the reasons why, and I think a lot of people forget, but one of the reasons why Sam Raimi's actually a really good director is the fact that he could make a movie that's sort of zany and wacky. And action-packed, but also have, like, legitimate emotional moments in it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sam Raimi's great. The third movie is a fucking pile of garbage, but I still enjoy watching it. Mm-hmm. I have a theory that movie, like, they told three people to write the script for, and then, like, as they were rushing into the office to show them, they all bumped into each other, and all the pages fell together, and they just scooped them all up and then shoved it to them, and they're like, it'll do. Yep. And that's the movie they went with.
I think that's probably very likely what happened.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Moving on to...
Let's talk about other things that are based off of movies that have gotten horrible recently.
Shadow of War, Middle-earth Shadow of War, or as more commonly known, Shadow of Mordor, is a game that came out. It's a sequel to Shadow of War, which was a great game, and they managed to completely rip out the soul of the original. Warner Brothers decided that they love loot boxes, and they were going to put loot boxes in Shadow of War. And
for some reason.
Yeah, they wanted all that money, and you could basically bypass all of the gameplay by just buying loot boxes, so that, because the whole point of Shadow of War is the idea that you're grinding through the game to recruit better units and have like the whole nemesis system thing build up and create like a better army that then you could use at the end of the game to go and take down the high level areas. But with loot boxes, you could just buy all the stuff buy, it would be random what you get because they're loot boxes. But if you just kept buying them, you would keep getting more stuff, and eventually you'd be able to build up a big army, and then you could just go right to the end game content. You didn't really need to play the game, so that was weird and dumb. It also got criticized because this is a single player game and yet has all these obnoxious multiplayer style loot box exploitation things in it. And the game came out, it got fairly good reviews as I recall, but then we pretty much stopped hearing about it almost entirely.
I think the general consensus was like, it's not as good as the first one. And it was not the big, because like the first one was a surprise hit. The first one came out of nowhere and everyone's like, holy shit, this game's great. And it got this huge kind of word of mouth push. This one came out, fell into a mire of microtransaction controversy, and I think everyone just said they didn't care after that and stopped paying attention to it.
Yeah, when the majority of your press is bad press, I think your best case scenario is that people just get annoyed and forget about you. The worst case scenario being what happened to Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
So now Battlefront 2, as we talked about just recently, actually reintroduced or are going to reintroduce their microtransaction stuff, but they've completely reworked them, and now there aren't. It's not pay to win anymore. But this was after the controversy of everyone hating their loot boxes and them taking them out of the game. So Warner Brothers decided, you know what? Taking loot boxes out of the game sort of saved Battlefront. Kind of. Why don't we do that? So they took the loot boxes out, but that was dumb because everyone already forgot about Shadow of War. This was the thing they needed to do within the first few weeks of Shadow of War coming out, which is what DICE did with Battlefront, or Activision, or EA. EA.
EA.
And so it's just this weird, like, too little too late thing that happened. And you have Monolith, the studio that actually made Shadow of War, that probably didn't have any say in putting the loot boxes in the first place.
Definitely. I would highly doubt it.
Yeah. They say that the paid market compromises the game even if you don't buy anything.
Yeah.
So it compromises those same stories even if you don't buy anything. Simply being aware that they are available to purchase reduces the immersion in the world and takes away from the challenges of building your personal army and your fortress, which it does. And I'm sure that was the Monolith stance since the very beginning, but they just didn't have a choice. And I'm glad that now they have the freedom to take it out of their game.
Yeah, too little, too late, unfortunately. Or just too late in general. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel horrible for the developers because I'm sure you have this huge group of artists and level designers and programmers and, 3D modelers out there that slaved for years making all of this stuff, all this content that they want you to go through, and then they come down from the top, they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to make it so you can buy your way through everything. Like, it must be fucking heartbreaking to know that, there's a section of the people that play the game are never going to see the stuff that you make. Just because they have money, and other people, and some people don't. Yeah, no,
and really what's more, the fact that they now their game was generally panned because of the things that they didn't want to happen to it. And I don't think, and as we were talking about, this isn't going to help because it's too late. So now now they're probably all really bitter because they're thinking about, like, oh, if only Warner Brothers hadn't stepped in initially, like, how well would our game have done? And I think that's a legitimate thing to be angry about, because I'm sure Shadow of War would have done significantly better if it didn't have obnoxious loot boxes in it.
Probably would have. Yeah, like, it's unfortunate because it's several months too late to pull this. Like you said, they should have done this right out the gate. I wonder if there'll be a small uptick in interest with it. Maybe. Like, I think the only other, unfortunately in their case, they can't go free to play because it's a big old AAA game. But there might be a small bump or uptick if it goes on sale and the loot boxes are gone. Maybe there'll be a little bit of word of mouth where some people that played it and liked it will be like, oh yeah, you should play it now that it's not obnoxious and has the loot chests. But the thing that I question too is that how much of the game's core design was built with the idea of loot boxes in there, and how much is it going to be now that they're gone? How much of it is going to be needlessly grindy, from a gameplay perspective, because of the progression gates that were probably meant in the first place to be the paywalls, and now they're just like, no, you just got to play, you just got to kill things for 4 hours, to get enough money. I wonder if they're going to actually go into the core game design or the core game balance and actually do something about that, or if they're just straight up taking out the money gates.
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well, because who knows how late in the process Warner Brothers came in and decided that loot boxes were going to be the cornerstone of the game.
Right.
But I don't know. I assume, I want to assume that it was something that happened later, because we have the first game being made without those. So I kind of want to say that Monolith probably didn't initially plan on having loot boxes be such a major part of the gameplay of the second game. But I don't know, and yeah,
it was an early example of the loot box apocalypse from last year.
That's true.
It was before a lot of the other bullshit hit the fan. So you gotta be the first in something.
Yeah. Also, speculation. My assumption that why Warner Brothers is doing this, or the main reason, is probably because since the game's been widely panned, a lot of game companies or big game publishers can be totally cool if their game is has middling reviews, but it has that solid base of whales that are just spending that money on the loot boxes. And my assumption here is that either never came to be or dried up very quickly. Those whales got beached real quick.
The whales got beached. It became Death Stranding. This is also a situation where the context doesn't fit the content. I feel like this was an attempt to see what kinds of games you could put microtransactions into, and this isn't one of them. I think that whales work. If I had to guess, I'm not a cat petting executive, but I would have, if I had to guess, that whales are usually attracted or at least cultivated in games where in-app purchases are quick and easy and have something to do with the gambling aspect, which this one does. But when I think of someone being like, fine, yeah, I'll pay some money for that, or, well, yeah, I'll pay a couple $100 per day for this, I can picture it being done through a phone or something, or in a repetitive game like Fortnite, something like that, where those games are quick and the gameplay hook is solid. Whereas when I look at Shadow of War, and the first one as well, it's like these are big story RPGs where you sit in front of a couch or in front of a monitor and play it for several hours at a time, and there's fucking Silmarillion shit going on. It's like it just doesn't strike me as a game that it's like when that paywall comes up, I don't picture the whales being like, oh yeah, I'll plop down $500 right now. It just doesn't seem to have that casino kind of vibe to it, the way that something like maybe Hearthstone would. So yeah, I feel like that's probably not drawn in the kind of people that spend that amount of money on these things. If I had to guess.
If you had to guess. No, I think that makes sense. So let's talk about, speaking of games that didn't quite hit the mark.
Didn't hit the mark.
Let's talk about Lawbreakers.
Let's talk about Lawbreakers. This is from Boss Key Studios, the developers of Lawbreakers, headed up by Mr. Cliff Basinski, Cliffy B. They have made an announcement to the Lawbreakers community. It has been a while since we said anything about Lawbreakers. With that, the past 4 months at Boss Key Productions have been especially trying, as we pride ourselves at being communicative and transparent. So here is the very real truth, which may not come as a surprise. The fact is, Lawbreakers failed to find enough of an audience to generate the funds necessary to keep it sustained in the manner we had originally planned for and anticipated. And while a pivot to free-to-play may seem like easiest change to make. It's they're missing a word in there. Seems like easiest change to make. A change of this magnitude takes publishing, planning, and resources to do it. The team here has worked hard on this game over the past 3.5 years, and our studio is determined to give this game the second life it deserves. However, between now and then, we cannot sit idle. We will continue to support the game in its current state, but we also need to focus on other projects with fresh creative leaders. We have been working on something new, and we can't wait to share more news about it. It's a passion project and that we're in complete control of. Thank you for our ongoing understanding and patience, Bosky Productions. So that's basically, if you decode those words, basically saying that Lawbreakers did really badly and they're dropping it. I doubt that they even come back to it.
Yeah, no, they're cutting their losses, which is the smart move. I'm actually the silver lining to this statement is I was really afraid that Boss Key Productions was just going to go away as a company.
I'm surprised that they haven't, because as far as I know, they're pretty small.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of a war chest Cliff Bleszinski has. I'm sure it's pretty sizable, and I'm sure that he has a lot of investors that will put up with failure to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But I find it surprising that they're not like, yeah, we're done. Because, I mean, I've seen smaller games sink. I've seen smaller games sink smaller studios. Flagship games comes to mind with Hellgate London. That game out. And that was from the creator of Diablo. Like, his company that he made, and that sunk the whole fucking company. And then he sunk another company, and then I think he actually just sunk one recently.
Oh, jeez. What? Stop giving this guy jobs.
I know, but he went and then did the company that made Torchlight.
But that company didn't sink, did it?
It didn't sink, but he's not with them anymore.
Oh, okay.
And then he went to Gazillion Entertainment to make Marvel Ultimate Heroes or whatever.
Which did sink.
Which just recently sunk. So he's, he made Diablo, but unfortunately he can't. He's like a kryptonite, I guess, for the games industry. But yeah, apparently they have enough investment or enough personal capital to stay aloft after Lawbreakers. I mean, who knows how much money Lawbreakers took to develop. It didn't seem like it had a huge marketing budget. And that's usually like half the fucking budget of a game. And so who knows how much they actually spent making the damn thing. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it looked cool, but it didn't have much of an identity other than you can mess with gravity. And I remember when they went into public beta, I tried it once. The server didn't work, and I said, "I'm done." And I imagine that's the casual response that a lot of people had when they tried it the first time. And that's a killer. If you can't bring people in, it's a killer. And I know that Cliffy B is too prideful to make it into a battle royale game. So.
I will point out that Runic Games has also shut down.
There you go.
So, although,
yeah, I fear the one thing I do fear is that this may just be they actually are probably maybe shutting down like Boss Key Studios, and this is just like them kind of waiting a little bit to see if any investors notice them, and if they don't, then they might collapse. That's the other option.
I would be, if they are putting out another game, I'm very interested to see how how much of a horrible money grab sellout game it is. If it's like a stupid phone game type thing that's just made to make money,
right?
Which would be so sad. It would be so much sadder than if the company just shut down.
It would be, and I don't see that coming from them just because we know Cliff Bleszinski's attitude towards things, and he is what he is. I'm not a huge fan of him personally, but I think that he sticks to his guns. That's one thing, and he doesn't suffer bullshit. One thing that they did say, though, here is that they are looking to a change of creative leaders to focus on other projects with fresh creative leaders. So that's also interesting phrasing. Perhaps Mr. Bleszinski may be on his way out.
Yeah, maybe the company is still going to operate, but Bleszinski is on his way out. That would be odd to me, though, because I kind of thought that was like his project. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, best case scenario, what it could also mean is that Cliff Bleszinski is reaching out to other game developer contacts that he knows, and it's like, hey, work on a game with me.
Right.
That would be cool, and I would love to see that. But yeah, we'll see what happens to Boss Key Productions. Right now, its future is
Yeah.
kind of in flux. And yeah,
They're working on they're working on the reboot of Jazz Jackrabbit is what they're
oh,
doing.
great. Uh, but no, I really want them to succeed, though. I
Yeah.
do. I'm not a huge Cliff Bleszinski fan either. Like the he was one of his big things were the Gears of War games,
Yeah.
which I just think are needlessly like gross and hyper masculine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Pretty groundbreaking for the time though.
yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, so I respect his work. I'm just not particularly into it.
Yeah.
So I want him to succeed doing new, fresh, interesting things. And the
Yeah.
idea that I just like smaller studios run by creatives. I mean, the best example of that is like Tim Schafer, right?
Yeah, Double Fine.
Yeah, but yeah. So hopefully, Boss Key, we will see something interesting from them soon, and they will not just go away.
Yeah.
But that
maybe
means
they'll pick up David Jaffe because and start another paranormal investigation agency as his closed down just recently.
oh no. Yeah, that was so weird. Why was it a paranormal investigation
It's
agency?
Yeah, slash game developer.
Slash game. What?
I don't know.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
They're done now anyway, so
They're-
it doesn't matter.
So let's talk about games that
Games.
just came out. What just came out? This week, on the 3rd, we had the game Minute come out for the Windows, the PS4, and the Xbone, which is a really clever and fun little like Zelda sort of knockoff.
I've not heard of it.
Its graphics are akin to, they're like black and white pixel art 2D. I mean, they look like either an early Zelda game or like Undertale, similar to that.
Sure.
And the idea is that you have 60 seconds to do something.
That's
so
why it's called Minute.
yeah, so you start off in your house, you wake up, and then you have 60 seconds to go and do whatever in the big world. And the idea is that if you like find an item or something, then when you wake up during your next play, the item is like there next to you, so you can make progress.
Kind of like a Majora's Mask kind of situation.
A little bit, yeah. So there's definitely a ton of influence from Zelda, but I was watching some gameplay of it. It looked delightful, like a fun little indie
Yeah,
game.
this looks adorable. This has like almost like original Game Boy graphics.
Yeah. It does kind of look like that.
Yeah, except not green. the wonderful Game Boy Green. Anyways,
Let's see, King of Fighters 97 global match. Okay,
KOF.
I hate to break it to them, but I think that game may have come out like 21 years too late. But it's out. It was out on the 3rd for PC, and it's out yesterday, the 5th for PS4 and the Vita. Vita still getting
Vita
all those
lives!
titles. Ooh,
Vita lives!
so good.
It still gets support, just not by the people that made it.
If it's a 21-year-old game, then it can probably fit on the Vita. So
Probably.
there you go. Then for some reason there's nothing out today. I don't know what the deal is with not putting out games on Fridays, but I guess it's just because we're too early in the year.
True.
But on the 10th we have
We're really not actually. We're almost like halfway through the year.
Oh, that's true.
Amazingly.
But we're still too early in the year.
No, I can't believe that it's like E3's not that far away.
No. This is what we were talking about earlier. Time just moves by so
I know.
quickly.
Get older and yeah.
Yep.
Anyways.
So we have Dark Rose Valkyrie for the Windows, a role-playing game. I don't know what that is.
Right on. Right on.
We have Extinction for Windows, PS4, and the Xbone, which is a hack and slash game. We also have Owlboy coming out for the Xbone and the PS4.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Man, that game is cool.
It is probably like one of the most gorgeous games I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
They worked on that game for, I think, like 12 years.
But did they work on it for as long as King of Fighters 97?
No, they didn't. Amazingly. Yeah, no, they worked on that for a very, very, very long time, and it shows graphically.
We have on the 11th, Hellblade is coming to the Xbone, which good for Hellblade.
Sure.
Hey,
that's interesting. I thought that was a PS4 exclusive.
It might have been a timed exclusive. I don't know. But that's actually Hellblade is a fantastic example of a small studio doing their own thing.
Yeah.
What Lawbreakers should have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the what else do we have?
Yeez.
Ys Origin for the
Yeez.
Xbone coming out on the 11th as well.
There's like 1,000 Ys games.
Yeah.
They're making those forever.
But,
what was? Sorry, it's now I have it on my mind. It was Ninja Theory is the company that made Hellblade. They're in England. What else did they make? They did Heavenly Sword.
I thought they were Japanese.
No, they are Cambridge, England. They did Heavenly Sword and Slaved Odyssey to the West, that weird game that kind of looked cool, but I don't think anyone played. And they did DMC, the new Devil May Cry.
Yes. So yeah, that's it. In the next couple of weeks, we've actually got some really big things coming out later this month. Things like God of War, the Labo kits will come out. I'm excited to report on those to see if they're like horrible cardboard garbage or if they're like cool and innovative. And we're just really not going to know until they actually come out.
I mean, it's Nintendo, so it'll probably be really nice and fun garbage.
Yeah, there you go.
Cardboard.
But so that's that. That's the show.
That's it.
Thanks for watching or listening. We have been Don't Copy That Floppy. You can check us out on social media. The places we are most active are Facebook and Twitter. And our handle on Twitter is at DCTF Podcast. If you want to support the show, you can... I always talk about how there's two ways, one simpler than the other, but there's actually really three ways. The even easiest way is to go to chipbit.net and just give them some site traffic, because I'm sure James will appreciate that. And we have a show archive up there, and that's where our show is hosted. But the other ways to support the show is to go and subscribe and review on iTunes. Give us a rating and review on there. That would be great. Also, if you have money you want to support the show, we have a Patreon. You can give some money each month. And it's one of the things we're going to be talking about next week, because there might be some reveals this weekend, is PAX East is going on tomorrow and the next day in Boston, Massachusetts. So next week we will be seeing if there has been any interesting news for that. We'll be reporting on it then. And
Massachusetts. Are you going? Are you going to that?
No, but we went last year. And because we went last year because we had money from Patreon, and we don't get quite enough money from Patreon to go every year, but judging by the amount of money that we will have next year, we will probably be going next year. So get ready for that and reporting.
Go hang out with Matt Colville.
I know, I'm so bad I didn't go this year because there are cool people who are going to be there that I want to hang out with. But yeah. that's that. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, Chris, what do people have to remember?
Cliff Bleszinski doesn't want you to copy that floppy. So don't copy that floppy.